all kinds of stuff. Oh, that's how you are, huh?
Got to get going, man.
What's wrong with you?
Right. Welcome to Over 50, starting over everyone. I'm Barry Edwards.
And I'm Merle Garrison.
And this is our first show of the new year, 2024. So,
how about that?
We didn't discuss New Year's resolutions or anything last time. Did you have any?
No, I actually I don't use January 1st to do any resolutions. Here's why. I never keep them. And it's funny, a funny thing. I've been going to Planet Fitness since August, and it's been a good experience. I've really enjoyed it. You turned me on to that whole thing. And on January 2nd, I was in the gym. Now my gym is almost empty every time I go in there, except for on January 2nd. It was
Every
almost
year.
full. Couldn't believe how many people were there. But then I went 2 days later and it was back to normal.
Okay, for me, it dwindles over 2 weeks.
I thought it would dwindle over a few weeks. I was like, by the end of the month.
It's really irritating because, and I go through this whole conversation with myself in my mind. I did this morning, and it's like, I want to hit certain routines, certain machines and stuff. And there's, this gluttonous person there on their phone, just hogging up a machine, not doing anything. And then I just tell myself, well, and I do this all the time. Well, it's not meant to be for today. I will just use a different machine. It's not going to, it shouldn't ruin my day.
Right.
So I fight with myself on that because they're not going to be here in a week. But here's what does happen. One or two people will stay and commit. So it's like, hey, hooray for you. And I mean that seriously. I really tried to remind myself, anybody that walks through those doors ever is a winner that day because they made it that day.
I totally agree with you. Just showing up is 90% of the battle.
It really is. Right.
Because then once you get there, you're like, I might as well do something.
Yeah. No, well, right. I mean, for sure. But it's really a shame that people get so lost in their phones. I'm on my podcast when I'm working out, and I love that. But if there's a gym where it's like, you got to check your phones at the door or something, I might be good with that too.
Right.
Just the people are just totally lost in their phones. To your point, I'm also not a big New Year's resolution guy, but it's like I'll have something or another in my mind. I want to, do a little bit better in these regards. And I just kind of go with that. But I have a good Cleveland Clinic thing about making resolutions.
All right.
It's really short. And I think it's meaningful because it's about being meaningful. It's called Making Resolutions, Make a More Meaningful One. The start of the new year is a popular time to think about goals achieved in the past year and those yet to be realized. When it comes to making resolutions, many people focus on getting more exercise, eating more nutritiously, or controlling stress. Of course, and all of these are important. But if your goal for 2024 is health related, you may want to look beyond these and take steps to live a more meaningful life. Having purpose is good for you. Living a meaningful life can help improve sleep, decrease risk of stroke, heart attacks, and dementia, including Alzheimer's. To live a more meaningful life, you need to determine the activities and behaviors that allow you to connect with your values and personal goals. And here's an exercise from the Cleveland Clinic Stress Free Now program that can help you do that. I don't want to go through these 4 steps verbatim. It's basically just saying, make a record of what you do during a day, anything that takes more than 15 minutes of your time. And then just assess it. Is it a pleasurable thing or a meaningful thing? And then take a look at that after a few weeks and decide, do you want to take out some of these pleasurable activities and replace them with more meaningful ones? Because maybe you're doing some meaningful activities a little bit that you would like to put a little more time into. Let me explain what I mean, folks. This podcast is born out of that, doing something more meaningful, giving back. And now, since we've been doing this for 3 or 4 years now, 4 or 5 years now. It was 2019 when we started. It's 2024 now. So 4 years in. come next November, it'll be 5. Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. Okay. So now my favorite pastime to relax and unwind my brain is to play this online 8-ball pool game. And
Oh
while I'm
yeah. Yeah.
doing that, I read the news. Like
Huh.
I have them open side by side. I scroll through the news, I read what I want, and I'm looking at it largely for the podcast, not to my own interest, sure, but largely for the podcast. What do I find meaningful in there, and how can I give that back? It We've talked about this many times, Merle. It's helped us improve in a lot of ways. Hey, doing an interview, doing sales, going for a job interview, just so many things. Scott, your brother and I, Scott, we met up a couple weeks ago around Christmas, had the best time. I'm not sure if I brought this up on the last podcast.
No, no.
Okay, had the best time. Uh, he was in town in southern central Ohio. It seems like southern to me. It was an hour and a half drive for me. That's a big deal. And he was at his in-laws with his wife Karen, and I came down to see him, and we had the best time just sitting around the table BSing for a while, for like 2 hours, 2 hours to 2.5. It went by like in 10 minutes. And
Oh yeah.
yeah, and I apologized to Scott after he walked me out. I said, I felt like I talked too much. He's like, no, dude, we know everything about ourselves. We wanted to hear from you. But my point is, I said to Scott, it's like, Toastmasters is one of those things. And this podcast is one of those things that allowed a more introverted person like myself to just be comfortable in telling these different stories and engaging and so on in a meaningful way. So those are things. Toastmasters can help your life in so many different ways if you got anything out of what I just said there.
I think what I'm hearing you say is that we can take our time that we're kind of using as idle time, but it's pleasurable for us, and turn it into something that is absolutely more fulfilling in our lives, that leads to not only inner happiness, but also being a blessing, most of all, to people around you. You're being able to tell these stories. I remember when you were taking Toastmasters, and it was really cool that you had decided to do that. I've actually seen you come a pretty long way, Barry. You and I, when we were in college, and just how you were practicing for your speeches, and we'd use our television as the podium. And I mean, that was so fun. And then you took it to another level. You spent your own time doing it, and now we have this. And by the way, I think you do a great job, whether I'm on the show or not on the show. The interviews I've seen you do have been fantastic. So I get
really
what you're
appreciate it. Yeah, and it's something that can be meaningful for you and turn it into something else. So, in any regard that you find this meaningful stuff, and during the winter, that's why I started Toastmasters for a large part. Now, I always wanted to do it for myself. Never wanted to get up in front of those people and give those speeches, but I wanted to accomplish it. And I also wanted to do something more social during the dark winter months. And so that was a blessing.
Well, and I think, wasn't there a little bit of fear and trepidation there before, like that? This was climbing a mountain for you.
Well, a little bit. I mean, more so for other people, I think, because I'd always push myself in networking things. Still, it was, a big deal. I hate when everybody's heads turn and they're on to me as the question is being, I don't mind so much anymore, but
you're good at
I used to, but thank you. I want to talk about.
Wait, I got an aside here, because you told the story about Scott and visiting Scott and Karen at Karen's parents' house and everything. I heard from Scott, and he told me that they had this most wonderful time with you, Karen's parents especially, and you had recommended an IPA to Charles Motter, Karen's dad.
Yeah,
and boy, they said that as soon as you left, he had to go down, Scott, and he went to the store, bought that beer.
Yeah.
They had it that night. They loved it.
Yes,
Uh,
Vivacious by Great Lakes. It's
that's
really incredible.
cool. He was telling me that the Great Lakes breweries are actually really very good.
Yeah.
And one other thing was is that they had such a good time with you. I heard that they came outside when you were leaving. All of them did.
No,
And
Scott did.
oh, okay. Well, that's what you saw. The rest of them came out and were waving to you, but you must have been pretty focused because you drove away and didn't even see that they're all
I
waving.
saw Scott waving. Okay, I don't know, but
Okay.
yes, we had a fantastic time, and Karen's parents are the sweetest people,
They
and
got a
I
kick out of you.
I hope to go back out there and visit them next year.
Scott told me that he was very proud to
Uh,
introduce you to his in-laws, and I understand
uh,
why. Just having you as a friend
uh,
makes us all look good.
that's really the nicest thing you possibly say. Scott said that to me, and I told Lisa that, and that's a really nice thing to say. Of course, I feel the same about you guys. Of course. Now, what this show is about. This is going to be a rocking show. We are going to take a look back at the biggest happenings of 2023, and we're going to make some predictions about what's going to come up in 2024. Of course, there's plenty of negative things that have happened in 2023, but I scoured the interwebs and all the different kinds of sites to actually find positive things too.
I
And
love that.
I had to interject my own in here in certain places because I'm like, what about this thing and that thing? And man, I looked at the celebrity stuff. I couldn't find anything. Well, we went over the stars that or celebrities that passed just recently,
Yeah, we
remember?
did. Yeah.
And
Yep.
that
Yep.
was a really good segment of a show. So I don't want to cover that again. So this is really not very celebrity related at all. I tried not to go too heavy on the politics because I figured you would interject with enough of that anyway. So I went mostly more cultural stuff. And I had to start off with, again, this is just my own, because the one thing that I couldn't find coming up on these top 10 lists of what happened in 2023 was the Twitter files and the disclosure of that. And the reason is because it actually was disclosed in December of 2022.
Oh, that was a 2022
But
thing.
I look at it like, but the real conversation from it came in January, February of 2023. So I
This
just
is true.
wanted, and I got to tell you, when looking up this stuff, along with a lot of other stuff, and Google is my last resort. I use the Brave browser for its privacy, and I use DuckDuckGo for its privacy. Even still, the amount of filtering into the left wing articles is just astounding. So the Twitter files, boy, look that up and check out. Well, all of the left leaning stuff. CNN, of course, proliferates around there, and how they just kept trying to downplay everything. Good, but then go to the Wikipedia page, and I know that that's not the most trustworthy thing, too, but you got a lot of good quotes. I'm just going to read something quickly here. So the Twitter files disclosed in 2022. The real disclosure came in early 23. Matt Taibbi stated that, and I'm going to mention again what I've mentioned before, is that in a really brilliant move, Elon Musk divulged the Twitter files to like 4 left-leaning journalists, real journalists. And I think it was brilliant that he disclosed them to left-leaning journalists, because otherwise nobody would listen to the right-leaning and it would become a big thing. And I remember Michael Schellenberger, he's one of them, really good reporter, really good dude. And I remember him saying when he was interviewed on Rogan, he was like, look, I was towing the line for the left for my entire life. And Rogan's like, really? What are you saying? Like, when did you stop? He goes, about 2 weeks ago when I went through the Twitter files. Matt Taibbi stated that the files told a Frankenstein tale of a human built mechanism. One of the world's largest and most influential social media platforms, grown out of control of its designer. That's a hell of a statement right there.
Mm.
Taibbi wrote that although external requests for moderation from both political parties were received and honored, an overwhelmingly left-wing employee base at Twitter facilitated a left-leaning bias. And that facilitated, after all of the dust started to settle, even before it settled, Elon Musk fired about 75% of his staff and said that Twitter runs better with 25% because there's so much ideological baggage of people not working anyway. They really, if you ever heard about the crap that a day in the life of a Twitter employee was like, did nothing.
That's right. And they were rewarded.
It's a good
for doing
start.
Nothing. Yeah.
So this is a good start.
I think it's a good start too.
And feel free to chime in on anything like that.
Let me weigh in on this because Schellenberger, is that his name?
Michael Schellenberger.
Michael Schellenberger.
I was quoting Matt Taibbi though.
But
Barry
these guys
Weiss
and Barry Weiss was involved and Matt Taibbi. But I didn't know. I knew who Barry Weiss was. I didn't know Matt Taibbi. I didn't know Michael Schellenberger before this happened at all. And I'm so glad that this actually put them in the spotlight so that I could hear what these people have to say. Because I really
from
think,
their perspective,
as we look at the coming year, these guys have done a tremendous service for the American public, which is they've done so much to awaken the woke. And, you know, as you're saying, this guy was towing the line for the left. That means he was a woke person.
He was all in.
This actually was like cold water being splashed in his face when he realized that there was an invisible hand. And we say it's the American government, but it's much bigger than that. The American government has been used as a tool to foment a way of control in a one world government. That's what we're really looking at right here. The CIA and the FBI are being used that way, and they were exposed through the Twitter files. Thank God that happened. And I think that when you take a look at how government works, those that have the microphone seem to be the ones that are really controlling the narrative, which is actually controlling our government. And when you take a look at Twitter and Google and Microsoft, I mean, they're holding the microphone. And what we saw was that they are the proxy government that's overlaid on top of our constitutional government, even our bureaucratic government. Guys like Matt Taibbi and Michael Schellenberger and Barry Weiss, women, they've exposed that. And I really see what you were talking about all year last year is that this is the beginning of the demise of this infrastructure that's been in place for so long, that's been a facade in our lives. And now I think what's going to happen is we're going to start seeing information that we never thought possible, we never thought could have existed. Case in point, now we're finally seeing the Epstein stuff coming out. It's dripping out, but it is coming out. But I think that's going to lead to some other revelations that are going to be shocking to all of us. And I think we're in for a year of that.
Well, that's interesting. My take on the Epstein stuff, I have already seen the groundwork being laid with immediately. They're like, Bill Clinton. Okay, so last year or the year before it was reported he went to that island 21 times. But no, he didn't partake in any funny business whatsoever. They've been going on and on about that. So I think it's just going to keep getting, nobody was actually really involved, even though their names, you know, they're going to.
I agree with that.
So that's going to be all
I
downplayed.
think that less and less people are believing that. I mean, look, you know, we just had Joe Biden within the last 24 hours come out and say that the border is very concerning, and that
did he say that? I didn't see that.
If they would just give him more money, he would be able to fix the border.
Oh yeah, he needs more money.
And it's like, what are you talking about? So if you can say that and get away with it, you can get away with anything. But I'm just saying this. I think it's time to get out of the pool. I think time's up. You can look, I used to work at a carnival game. You can fool people for a period of time, but it's like after a while they get hip to it. It's like if you're a magician only shows you the trick one time.
Mhm.
If you see it more than once, you start to figure out what the trick is.
Right.
And that's what's going on here. These guys they've all come out with this deception, and they think they could just go on and on and on and say, don't believe your lying eyes. But when you have people that are sleeping on your front yard that are from a foreign country,
Mhm.
and more keep showing up, well, you're going to start to believe. And I
Yeah.
think that's the problem that's going on here, is that this facade is starting to crumble.
Yeah, I want to go back and just kind of mention something that you said about Michael Schellenberger being awakening from the woke. I I kind of like I saw a parallel with John McWhorter, and you remember that he
Yes.
is the friend of Glenn Lowry and
Yep.
his partner in crime there. I say that
Saw that
facetiously.
too. Yeah.
Two leftist guys. Now, what I want to correct here is John McWhorter introduces himself as being really on the left, but anti woke, anti PC. So those two things are not exclusive, being far left. Doesn't mean you're woke,
Well,
because you could be far left and believe in, want the equality for everybody. You believe in democratic processes, but then when you see people, like the Harvard professor and things like
yeah.
that, you could be like, I that's just crazy.
Well, okay, and I think this is all semantics and how you define things. But for me, if you're far left, you're actually not a. I see liberals and far left as different people. I
Well,
don't
I do
see.
too,
Okay,
but
so
I
I
am
think if you're
saying,
far left, you've pretty much adopted the woke policy, and I see real liberals not really accepting that.
yeah, I guess it's a matter of we need to tighten down definitions,
I think so
because
too.
I
And
think
but
liberals are a far distance from far left. Like
I agree.
in these days, further and further every day,
I think that far left is very un-American and liberal is very American. Maybe we can use that as a definition, because I can agree with. We might not agree on policy, but I can agree on fundamental truths with liberals, even though I'm a conservative. But I can't agree with the far left that says a man who decides he's a woman is now a woman. That to me is not, that doesn't make, that's a foundation of truth that I don't have.
Well, back to a Michael Schellenberger or a John McWhorty. If you could ask them, I'm not so sure that they would agree with the woke BS, the smokescreen. I don't think that they would really be on board with that.
I don't think so either, and therefore I think that they're liberals and not left. I don't think John McWhorter is a leftist.
Okay. All right. I got stuff by date starting early in 2023, and I just picked out the big ones, I thought. So, on February 28th of last year, get this one, Merle. The FBI publicly confirmed that they believe COVID-19 originated in the lab. Can
Boy,
you
that,
believe that? What
yeah,
about face that was?
and it seems like that when it was released, that information was released, they tried to really downplay that. Oh,
Yes.
everybody knew that.
Yeah.
Well, okay, but what about the people that said over and over again that it wasn't, like Dr. Fauci?
Yes.
And where are the charges against Dr. Fauci for doing the gain of
Yeah.
function testing, which was highly
There's
illegal? And
countless
I mean,
charges.
he's been busted red-handed on this, and nothing.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
How does that work?
So much of this got convoluted because it became a Trump thing. And then Trump's gone.
Yeah,
And now
yeah.
it's like, oh, well, no, we need to take that away from Trump and adopt it as our own now. And that was a real slippery slope. And that's what happened there. Hey, next one, March 14th, OpenAI released GPT-4 and an upgraded version of the popular artificial intelligence chatbot. And that's when I believe that the chat GPT really came on the map, because then all of a sudden chat 3.5 is available to everybody for free. And now everyone's curious because of all of the news around 4. I mean, did it seem like this just happened to us, slapped us over the head
It,
overnight?
it did, and it suddenly changed everything. And now now it's like looking back, what kind of monster did we just create right there?
Yeah, well, related to that, a few weeks later, May 1st, Jeffrey Hinton, the godfather of AI, resigned from Google amidst growing concerns over AI. The dude that's credited with developing AI resigns because of his concerns over AI. I heard him on a podcast, and I do believe it was with Lex Friedman. And I thought he was extremely interesting. But at the same time, I came back away with the same thing I always personally come back with is there's no putting the toothpaste back in the tube.
No.
So we better try to move forward as responsibly as possible. Um, but yeah, now
Yeah.
it's a race. It's a weapons race
It
basically.
has to be, right. I mean, you're
Hmm.
right. That's why you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube, because
Right.
now it is a bona fide weapon, and we know from the past arms races that the ones that master this are the ones that have all the power.
It's like getting the
And
high ground in space. It's
it
about the same
really,
thing.
it's the high ground. You're right.
Yeah.
And really now things are more and more about information wars than anything else. That's really what hybrid warfare is
Uh,
about. And the ones that can master that and disseminate that, as we've seen and talked about on our last segment, is the ones who can control language and speech are the ones who win.
mm,
And so I would say that as people that want to save this country, and really the country is under assault, this is a number one thing that we have to be looking at is how like who's in charge of language. Does it grow organically, which is what it's supposed to do,
yeah.
and evolve organically, or is somebody manipulating it? And we really have to stop that from happening. I don't know the answers.
Me either,
I don't
buddy.
know the answers, but
Me either.
this is a becoming a detrimental thing. Look at 1984. We referenced that a lot on this show, but that book by George Orwell,
Yeah.
it was all about the powers that be manipulating language,
Mhm.
and also how they could change it on a daily basis,
Mm.
and how they would
See it all the time.
use the news. Winston, the main character, worked for the news agency, the Ministry of Truth, which was anything but a Ministry of Truth. And he
Yeah.
was using, remember how they could change somebody's reputation or make somebody disappear by putting
Yeah.
them down the memory hole? All
I
of
don't
these.
remember much about it. I need to go back and watch that movie. There was a
Oh,
good movie on it.
it was a good movie, and I would recommend. The book is actually not a long book. You can knock that out in about a day.
Mm,
But if you read the book, you're going to get detail that the movie doesn't give.
mm,
So if you read the book and then watch the movie, it's way more meaningful. Get that
mm.
book before they burn the books.
Yeah, that's a good point. But I will say that I remember a few years ago watching that movie adaptation. I thought it was really
Yeah, it
good.
is really good. It is.
Yeah.
I agree
So
with
I
you.
grouped a couple more of the tech things together that were closely related. I mean, date wise, chronologically.
Yeah.
The FDA, May 25th, the FDA gave Elon Musk the go ahead for trial to try his Neuralink brain implants on humans.
Jeez.
Uh-huh. I didn't know that they gave him a dead set okay on May 15th or May 25th of last year for
I,
trials,
I
human trials.
okay, so how does that I'm afraid to even ask how that works.
I don't
How
know. I didn't bother. I could have dug deeper in all these, but we got so much to talk about. But I know it has to get the go ahead because you're talking about paraplegics. One of the first two things that are going to happen, paraplegics will be able to get robotic arms, limbs, and be able to work with them and use them. The other thing is a cure for Alzheimer's because you're going to have a memory enhancer. And both of those are really, huge. And if you have loved ones suffering from these things, you want it to go ahead. But
course.
I know right behind that is going to be like, hey, average everyday consumer, we can enhance your mathematical brain activity triple times, three times it. And, just get this little Neuralink thing, and you'll
Yeah,
be able to
yeah.
make phone calls without dialing anything right from your head, right in
Huh.
your head. Yeah.
It's funny. You've brought that last one up a few times
Yeah.
actually, and just having your phone basically embedded in your head,
Yep.
your
Yep.
smartphone, the smart technology,
You can
and
access
I agree with
Google,
you.
dude. You'll access Google in your head.
The whole concept of what's happening and the reason they call it a smartphone. I mean, think about that. That's some marketing going on right there
Yeah.
because, of course, if you can embed smarts into your head somehow, that wouldn't that be a bonus?
It's
And
coming soon.
we know that the powers that be that want this to happen are really going to market this as a benefit to you in order to control you, and that I
They're,
mean,
they're going to try for sure.
unfortunately, we see that they're doing that already. So it's not like really a giant guess that they would do that if they had it embedded in your head. I mean,
Right.
it's kind of
Right.
crazy. Wow.
Okay, related, and June 16th, a month later, the rules for the Grammy Awards were updated to restrict AI generated songs. That's kind of big because I could
That's
see,
huge.
when you go to the gym today, you go to Planet Fitness, they're going to primarily play pop music. So that's
They
where I
sure do. Yeah.
get a little bit of a feel for what the hell kind of music is going on because I otherwise don't listen to it. And it is all just auto tune crap. It's right off of a computer. And
Right.
so AI generated music, like, geez, how do you even discern if somebody's using AI?
Well, I was going to ask the same question. Like,
I
how
don't
would you
know.
know?
They're using a
I,
computer anyway, like GarageBand and Apple. So
I,
what's the
it's so crazy. And I've experimented on Chat GPT on creating a song. I actually had it create several songs for me.
oh hmm,
And I remember seeing Snoop Dogg come out and talk about this. And I thought, man, this chat thing is gonna put guys like him out of business. I mean,
right,
I could come up with 10 raps way better than him in about
right.
5 minutes. And it's gonna take him 5 years to come up with that.
You're
So
right.
I see the threat, but like you said, if you can't detect it, how can you prevent it?
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of like I use chat to help me write blog articles for clients. And I've had clients, I tell anybody that will listen, do not just expect chat to spit out your blog articles for you because I
Oh,
have a client that's been doing that
and they're
and
terrible.
Google's not indexing them. In fact,
Mm,
he's probably getting penalized for it.
mm.
And they don't listen to me though. And so I use chat, but when I do, chat is very easily recognizable because it'll always give you a high level bird's eye view definition of whatever it is you want it to talk about. And if you're a local lawyer or something, you want to tie it into something real world within your community. You want to tie it into maybe past case studies, just to make some specifics. Have an opinion. You need to tie it up with an opinion. So use it for some basic, like I often have it lay out a subject matter, and then I say, what are the 5 most important points on this? And it's pretty good at that. And I'll give 5 bulleted points, but I'll even say, okay, now summarize this in a good intro paragraph. And I could get
Right,
that.
right.
I could say, give me 5 good headlines for it. Those take some more work, but it helps. So if you use it, I can't say it's taken a typical blog article used to take me about 2.5 hours to write and generate and do it correctly. And now it takes me about an hour. That's a big improvement, but
That's huge.
it's me really working it. All right. So,
Let me
yeah, go
comment
ahead.
on that because it's interesting how useful this tool is, but I mean, some of the scary things about the tool is that they've got it embedded. We talked about Google; they've got it embedded in Google, so that if you put in a subject, and then all these articles come up, you can click on this little chat button now, and it'll tell you basically what to think about everything that it pulled up. And so and we've had Rex Lee on the show before. He was doing some experiments on this. He's like a tech advisor, and he geeks out on this kind of stuff. And so he was putting in chat. What is your opinion on the Russian collusion? uh,
Interesting.
with Trump, and he had it go ahead and put out an article on how Trump had colluded with the Russians. No mention that this had been debunked or anything
Sure.
like that. And so this goes into the whole thing of what is the purpose. So chat has great value to it,
Mm-hmm.
but what is the real purpose, and what has it been designed to do? And all these different countries are wanting to have control over this, because, as you mentioned earlier, this is the kind of thing that can be used as a weapon. And
Yeah.
so this it is being used that way, and we have to be very careful about how prevalent and pervasive this technology is. And
Yeah.
you and I have talked about how you mix this with quantum, and we've got a potential for some pretty serious automated enemies that are way smarter than us and way faster than us.
Well, if when you get this, and this is going to happen super quick, when you pair the current AI, artificial intelligence, with quantum computing, which thinks 1 trillion times faster than current computers, I would say instantly, you're going to get what's called AGI, artificial general intelligence, meaning that it understands what it's saying. It starts deducing its own answers from you're asking it and what it's putting out. And I think
Yeah.
at that point, I don't know if we could outsmart it. We can't outsmart it in a chess match at this
Yeah.
point.
Yeah.
So
And I think the chess thing speaks volumes because, in
in
chess,
in
yeah,
poker, you lie.
that's even more scary. Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
It
So it's
is.
strategic and it knows how to deceive,
Yeah.
and it's faster than us and smarter than us.
Yeah.
Yikes.
Yeah.
So I don't blame the guy for resigning, but at the same time, what did that do? It didn't. It was maybe his
A protest. Yeah.
virtuous protest on this, but it
Yeah.
didn't actually move the ball in a direction that's
It's
going to
kind of
help
like
us.
climate change, where everybody wants us to mandate these 100% clean or whatever things by next year, exaggerating a bit, but you can't do anything about China, Russia, and India. So that's not going to help anything because we
No,
account for
right.
something like 6% of that equation.
If right. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to go back to in the spring here. I wanted to put those tech ones together. They all happened between spring and summer of last year. I didn't bother looking this up, but I saw there was no mention of the East Palestine chemical fires, or which
Oh,
is Palestine, East Palestine, Ohio.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
my God, that has been swept under the rug. Those people are still suffering from all kinds of crazy effects since then.
Gosh, no kidding. When I think about where all these politicians go and how many of them have shown up in Kiev in the Ukraine, or
Mm-hmm.
Ukraine, I guess it's not the Ukraine, it's Ukraine, but
Right.
they travel all the way
Used to
over
be
there.
the, yeah.
Yeah, it used to be, but whatever. You travel all the way over there, but you can't go to Ohio and help our actual citizens. And
Military industrial
what
complex.
we're seeing right now is how our government seems to favor foreign
It's a money grab.
entities way more than the American citizen.
It's a
And
complete
here
money grab since
and
yeah, it's been for since we went off of the true dollar, since we went off the gold standard. It slowly. I just saw a chart the other day, and it just all of a sudden in the last 10 years went straight up. Like the last few years, just the amount of money. I remember hearing someone, it'll come to me who it was recently, talk about in 2008, you remember what happened with the economy then, bailing out the banks and stuff because of the real
yeah,
estate
yeah.
crash. That was, to that point in history, the single largest transfer of wealth from the common people to the super rich ever to happen in history. But now we've
I've heard
eclipsed
that.
that.
Yep.
We've
Yep.
eclipsed it. And
Yep.
this is a historic standard. If you see the chart on that, it'll make you just throw right up.
Well, it was really a worldwide thing that happened here, and you're right. It's yeah, when you look at all the money that was printed and was moving around, and all the theft that was a part of that. I mean,
Yeah,
in California, it was like at least half of that money didn't go where it was supposed to go,
at
and
least.
and there was no seemingly no oversight on any of this stuff.
Yeah, it's a money
Just
grab.
crazy. You're right. You're
Yeah.
exactly right.
And it happened with COVID. I mean, shutting down all of the family owned restaurants and shops so that the Walmarts and the big business, Amazon, and, the giant retailers could reap all of those benefits. That, again, it was just a giant money grab by the super rich.
Well, and you have to look at, how these large companies like Amazon and Walmart and Google and Microsoft
Apple.
and Apple and Facebook, these people are the ones that are dictating policy
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
They're the ones that are the gatekeepers of information. They're the ones in charge. That's what's
Right.
going on right now.
Right.
And so there's got to be a change, but all of these things you're bringing up show how we're getting closer and closer to becoming a full-on 100% bona fide fascist state.
Absolutely. And I think they're trying to, is it called default on the dollar? Crash our dollar.
Yeah, it seems very obvious to me that
Yeah,
that's what they're trying to do.
absolutely. Okay, so sometime around that same time, I didn't bother looking this one up either, was the whole China balloon incident.
How
That was,
about that, man? A balloon flies over the entire
but not
country.
just the balloon, followed by 2 UFO shootings, and didn't recover
Well,
anything.
well,
That's all the funny business right there. Nobody knows what that was all about.
You know what's so crazy, Barry, is I mean, I totally forgot about the two UFOs
Mhm.
that came
Within
after the
the
balloon.
next 2 days. Yeah.
I heard they looked a lot like the original balloon, but these were UFOs. And
Yeah, I bet.
again, the language. You change the language. You have the power to change the language. Who made the decision to turn those other balloons into UFOs? Who
Yeah.
made? And then everyone said it. So just say, okay, there's the invisible hand right there.
Mm.
Is that's I like, you and I were talking about the alien invasion the other day, which I really loved, is that the
Well
alien
done.
invasion is not spaceships coming down. It's coming across the border right now. We're
Right.
seeing it, and it's invading all of our cities. It's right in
Correct.
front of your face. The alien invasion is
Yes.
happening right now.
Correct. Hey, incidentally, about the UFO stuff, UAP is unidentified aerial phenomena.
How did they do that?
No, they always switch acronyms that confuse the public.
More
But
definition changing.
but you know that they were trying to get the Schumer doctrine, whatever that was, the Schumer report, whatever that was, the Schumer bill, through Congress, which was about demanding more full disclosure on the UFO documents and that kind of thing, and it got completely stripped down. And they said that one of the things, a key thing that the government got away with, was saying that we will only disclose things about UAP, unidentified aerial phenomenon. And as I was listening to, I just started listening to this podcast called Weaponized, and it's with George Knapp, the leading reporter on this stuff, and what's his name? It's always on Rogan and stuff. And he and George Knapp partner on everything.
Yeah.
It's
I
their
saw a little bit
podcast.
of that too. Yeah.
Now, what they said, the important thing about that was so important for the government is, first of all, I firmly believe that they have craft and non-human craft and biologics, as they have said. Firmly believe that anytime that they get a hold of another one, they can say, this isn't an unidentified aerial phenomenon. We identified it and it's not in the air. It's ours.
Very good point.
Mm-hmm. So they said we will
we'll only
disclose.
release what
Yes,
we don't
yes.
know, but we already know
Yeah.
this, so you can't have this.
Yeah. So, but they did go on to say, these guys
What a
did go
bunch
on
of
to say,
carnies.
very true. But they said this is not at all a defeat. This is actually a thing that should be a huge amount of optimism, because the first time in history, it's been disclosed in Congress. It's been talked about debated in Congress. It's now an open issue, and the stigma is largely dissipated from it. So, in other words, it's a giant step in the right direction, and public pressure will get more and more. So, there's that.
Well, I'm still skeptical because here's why I'm skeptical is because first off, so many untrustworthy characters around this, like Chuck Schumer. And there's always an ulterior motive for these things. They always the thing they're really good at is presenting something like, oh, the American people need this. But it's almost 100% of the time, and it doesn't matter if it's Democrat or Republican anymore. They're the same. They're all snakes. It's really for themselves. There's something that's going to give them more power somehow, or power to control us, to fleece us, which is what they're doing, or to remain in power. And it seems to me that this whole subject around UFOs and so-called aliens, look, we know one thing is that tyrannical governments use fear to control people. And if you're going to scare the wadding out of people, that's how if an alien invasion is proven to scare the crap out of people. So it seems like maybe
I think that's
I don't know the truth. I don't know the truth.
I think that's way in the past. I mean, that was the whole
really
started with War of the Worlds and stuff like that.
You
and
don't
they kind of
think
kept using that. But these days, like, everybody knows that there's UFOs out there everywhere. I mean,
what is a
common
UFO,
knowledge.
Well,
and
we don't even know what a UFO
so
is.
We're already accepting of that. I don't think anyone's really that afraid. We just want the information.
Oh, I am. Okay. If aliens come down to this planet and there's aliens in our city, that's going to terrify me. And I think that we can say that it's not going to be terrifying, but if it actually happens, I think it's just like, oh, that goes.
But we know that they've been around us for decades and they haven't taken over the world. So I don't think anyone's really that afraid. If you are, that's fine. But
no.
Okay.
I'm not saying that I know what people feel, but I'm telling you that I don't think that would go over well if people really believed it. Because Barry, people believe that there's UFOs. How many people have actually seen one? Very few. And then we don't have any real tangible proof of what we're actually seeing. So it's easy for us to be like, well, aliens. But if it really started to happen, I think it would be different. I think panic would happen everywhere.
Okay. All right. So June 18th last year, do you remember what happened? Because, dude, this is going to be like, I thought this was, you're going to be like, I thought this was like 2 weeks ago. Ocean Gate's Titan submersible imploded during the expedition of the Titanic. Doesn't that seem like it was like 2 weeks ago?
Yeah, I totally forgot about it.
Yeah, God, that was a huge tragedy. I don't even know what else to say about it, but it was
here's the one thing is that we found out that the news had lied to us and told us that these people were alive for several days underwater, and they weren't. They died like almost immediately. In that first day, they were dead. Yeah. So at the same time that was happening, remember, Barry? The whole Hunter Biden thing was happening in the background. He had to testify in court over his tax situation. Yeah. So this story became a smokescreen to keep that Hunter Biden story out of that first segment of the news. That's really what happened. And it was the Coast Guard that actually knew immediately that those people were dead within hours of their descent.
Yes.
And so it was
the Coast Guard. I thought it was a Navy, but
they're part of the Navy. But the whole thing, they're out in the water. They figured it. Our government knew it. Is really the point I'm trying to make. Whether it was the Coast Guard or the Navy, they knew.
Speaking of smoke screens, and these things were not right at the same time. And again, this is just on the top of my mind. Like, why didn't they put this in here? So this is just me talking. But there are the Canadian wildfires last summer.
Yes.
Dude, I live right across the pond from them, and it was bad over here.
Was it really?
On certain days.
Yeah,
oh, smell like smoke. What happened? Hello? Okay.
There you go. You're on again.
Okay, yeah, something happened.
That was
Okay,
weird. Yeah.
but yeah, it would be very smoky over here, and they started in the daily weather updates give you an air quality measurement and things like that. It was, and I looked it up. I'm like, how can this, like, what's on fire over there? And I go looking it up, and all of Canada was on fire. I swear to God, it was like all of Canada was on fire.
Wow.
With that, I also just put seem to be forgotten about already, the
Wait.
Maui
Can we go
wildfire.
back to the Canada thing?
Sure.
Because I didn't know you were moving on. So all of Canada was on fire, and it seemed
It's
to
all
me that,
forests, man.
well, there's a couple of things about that, Barry. One was I lived in Ohio for a long time, never saw any smoke coming across the ocean
Yeah.
from Canada before. That never
The
happened.
lake, the Great
I
Lakes.
I mean the yeah, it was an ocean to me back then,
Yes,
Lake
yes,
Erie.
yes.
And then also I never ever heard of a problem with fire in Canada. Oh, there's the forest fires in
Same,
Canada. Never
same.
heard of that before.
Yeah.
Okay, here's the next thing. Almost all those fires started within the same week. Most of them started on the same day all over Canada. And I
Mm.
saw a video of what looked like a helicopter going around with a flamethrower, like spraying some kind of accelerant down, lighted accelerant like napalm down into these forest areas. I don't know if those were true or not, but that's what I saw. And it seemed very coincidental that half of Canada was on fire and it all started at the same time when Canada had one of the wettest winters in Canadian history. How can that happen?
I don't know. I haven't heard anything like that. I definitely don't
I
frequent the
totally
same
looked
channels that
into it.
you do.
Yeah.
So
I
that
think
made
we
me
look at a
think
lot of the
about
same channels. I think you're wrong about that. I look at
that.
your stuff.
Okay. The Maui wildfires. I think that's another thing that got swept under the rug, just like the East Palestine thing.
Yeah.
Because we should help out our own, help out our people. These are people, natives of Maui for generations that are losing their homes now because we won't help them and they're going to get bought up by the super rich and hedge fund companies and stuff. And we don't talk about it anymore. Let's go on to Israel now. Let's give a bunch of money to Israel so they could kill a bunch of people. That's what we'll do. So,
Well, if you look into that whole Maui thing, you start to realize that there was a plan before the fire happened. They had been talking about how they were going to redistrict and they were talking about that land and everything like that. And there was something about their experimentation on the 15-minute city there. And then suddenly these fires all happened. And then they were quarantining people to different parts of the city, even though their houses were on the other side of the city. They wouldn't let them go. The people were sending supplies over there. The government wouldn't let them have the supplies. These are desperate people that didn't have housing. FEMA wouldn't let them have the donated supplies. So you got to look at these kinds of things and realize that there's some kind of plan going on. And also, Barry, if you take a look at some video from New Year's Eve, this past New Year's Eve in Hawaii, what one of the things that happened was that they had told the Hawaiians they weren't allowed to shoot off fireworks for New Year's Eve.
mm,
And the video from these Hawaiian areas, I've never seen anything like it. The protest that happened on New Year's Eve there, fireworks everywhere. You would have thought there was a war happening over there. But
wow.
there is a battle of the citizens versus our government in Hawaii. And I think that Hawaii is very experimental for the powers that be because it's so separated from the
Mm.
mainland.
I think Hawaii and California are in very much the same boat. They have the exact same weather climate, which is perfect. And super rich want that land. And it's
Well,
going to
yeah,
be
yeah.
yeah, it's going to be a
They're the only
haven.
ones that can afford it too. I
Yeah,
mean,
correct.
who can afford it? When
Right.
you take a look at and oh God, it's only going to get worse with, especially with the invasion that's happening from the southern border. These people are going to have to put together programs to take care of all these people that are there, and taxes are outrageous in California. I can speak to,
Mhm,
so things are going to get worse, not
mhm.
only culturally but financially.
Yeah, I don't want to go on a tangent, but once again, talking about the fleecing of America, the largest transfer of wealth from the common people to the super rich. We are participating in that as we speak. August 10th last year, Merle, I did not know this. Two rival driverless taxi companies were given approval to operate 24/7 in San Francisco, California. I didn't know that.
Hmm.
You didn't seem to not
They
either,
were
huh?
they were given what? Say that again.
Approval to operate. There are two driverless taxi companies operating in San Francisco.
Driverless.
Uh-huh. Now,
Can you
I've heard of
imagine?
somebody, and I thought it was under control. I've heard of somebody saying, I took my first driverless taxi thing. Well, were you afraid? And I thought this was all under controlled stuff, but apparently they're operating. I
You never
didn't know
know
it.
what can happen in San Francisco. It's interesting that
Isn't that a
that's
fact?
where
I got
they
some good
chose to
stuff
do
for you
this.
here. I got some good meaty stuff for
All
you
right,
here.
good,
All
good.
right. And this is me again. I'm throwing this in here because it wasn't on the list. I'm like, why didn't they talk about this? About that time, Dylan Mulvaney and the Bud Light disaster.
Boy, oh boy. I
All right,
mean,
there's a lot to talk about there. Okay, along with a long string of Disney fails that exposes the failure of ESG, which is environmental, social, and
sure does. Yep.
governance mandates. And this is interesting. Just a couple days ago, I listened to a podcast. Jordan Peterson, I think it's his latest podcast. Don't remember the guy's name, but he used to be a hedge fund manager or somebody big in BlackRock. Okay.
Ed Dowd.
Could be. I could look it up. I don't want to take the
Okay.
time right
All right.
now, but it could be. It was just on, and it was a fascinating interview because the guy was basically like, it's you and I talk about them like it's a bunch of guys from the Monopoly game, with the top hat and the big mustache and all that, and
Right, right.
and Klaus Schwab in a superhero outfit, a space outfit. But he was like, honestly, we're all doing what we thought was best for the world, trying to get people to do this environmental safety stuff and get on board with that. And he goes, but we did ESG. He goes, even he mentioned the name of the other guy that's kind of the father of it, still all into it, but
Larry
he won't.
Fink.
Yes, that is his name. He said, but he won't use the term ESG anymore because it's too tainted. And but he goes, you got to understand, it was coming from the best of intentions, but like the Bud Light debacle shined the light on just the negative power that it has. Disney has put out just a string of the most horrific movies because of the movie industry. Now, this is something that's really apparent to me, trying to find a decent movie to watch. You got movie executive, you got writers, you got executive producers, you got investors. All of these people need to follow a woke agenda in order to get anything produced so that it can go to these mandated woke critics so that they can, oh God, if those critics say that it's good, then we got a chance. So all these people are following the woke mandates, and then it finally gets out to the people, the viewers. And it's like, this stuff sucks, thoroughly sucks. And this has been going on now, like worse and worse and worse for several years now, but it's hit like the obvious pinnacle. And so I think that this is all just coming to a head. Disney is like said to have been making big changes at Disney World, where before they were getting super woke. And I can't speak any more knowledgeable about that because I don't really
Well,
remember.
let me weigh in here then. Good stuff, Barry. Let me ask you this question. So, do you, after watching this interview, what's your opinion? Do you believe that the whole woke movement coming from Larry Fink was coming from the best intentions?
I do. Here's what I actually, because I thought a lot about that, just me, just processing it.
Right,
And
right.
I thought, these are guys that live in utopia themselves. They're billionaires, not millionaires, they're billionaires. And they have all of this power, the power to move any industry that they want. That's totally intoxicating. They're living in a different world and they want everybody else to live in a utopia. So that's what it looks like. We're going to change the climate. We're going to, do all of this. I do think it comes from in their heart, in their brain. And I want to say in the hearts, but in their brain, where they convince themselves that they are doing some real good, but they're just so out of touch with reality that this is what happens. That's really what I kind of think. I'm
That's
not saying that they're
interesting.
not influenced by other negative influences, manipulated perhaps, but
Well,
you should listen to that interview. It's an eye. This guy put out a book, and he left that world. And God, I can't remember what that book was about. But that's the kind of stuff I stuck with. It stuck in my head. I was
he put
fascinated.
out a book recently.
Yeah, I
Is
don't.
that, yeah, that sounds like Ed Dowd. He put out a book actually. He's very famous now after he put out this book,
Mm.
and it had to do with COVID and some of the stats around COVID. It became a bestseller right away. That's how
Oh,
I know him. I read his book. But let me just go back. I do believe that there are people that work for BlackRock that believe exactly what this guy believed. So I'm not trying to. I'm not going to try to. Say that the
disparaging.
guy's lying or
Yeah.
anything like that. I believe that there are people that absolutely have good hearts, or they have good intentions about
Mhm.
what's happening with this whole DEI and ESG. But I don't believe that about Larry Fink. And
Mm.
when I look at Larry Fink and his history and his membership within the World Economic Forum, with Klaus Schwab. I don't believe that Klaus Schwab is a good guy, and I believe that the WEF is not a good organization.
I agree.
It is part of the one world government, and Larry Fink is very, very aware of that. But when you take a look at what ESG and DEI have done, is that it's made situations like the Harvard situation that I'm sure you'll get to in the year review happen, where you have a
I
person
can't
like
because no, that did
no, that
happen at the
yeah,
end of
where
last
you
year.
have a person
Yeah.
like Claudine Gay as the president
Mm.
of Harvard, who, in her thesis had her doctoral thesis had put together something with countless violations of plagiarism, and then
50.
the school can't actually fire her; she had to resign. In fact, the school actually had to back her up. Here's the problem with that whole story: is that it turns out that the whole ESG DEI thing made it so that black people could possibly be a liability to your company, because if they're not actually doing the job or doing the work, you're going to have a giant lawsuit on your hands if you
Yeah.
try to fire them.
Yeah.
And so why hire them in the first place?
I,
And
I
go
I
ahead.
think that to your point right there, a couple of really important things, hugely important things got unearthed to the common American people. And that is one, she immediately now is crying racism.
Oh
That
yeah,
she's
that's the
fired
playbook.
me. And that's what we say, whip. She's whipping us.
Mhm.
Weaponized identity politics.
That's
She
right.
and Greg
She's
Gutfeld
whipping us.
said
Yep,
this.
that's good,
Yeah,
Barry.
and thank your brother for that acronym. He and we were talking about it, and he's like, "Whip, man, you're being whipped,
That's
weaponized
what it
identity."
is. You're whipped. Yep.
And Greg Gutfeld had a great line. It's the absolute truth. He said, uh, "Racism isn't what took you out of your job; it's what got you your job."
Mm,
Think
mm.
about that.
That's exactly right. Because look, they talk about the power of redefining words. They have redefined racism as
Yes.
the oppressor oppresses the oppressee, and the oppressor can never be the oppressee. They're always the oppressor. And we've turned white supremacy into the American way of life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, for instance, being accountable,
On
being
time,
prompt.
punctual. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. These things are a part of white supremacy now. It used to be that a white supremacist was the guy that wanted to lynch black people, but now it's the American
Being on
system.
time.
Yeah, now everything is white supremacy. And
Correct.
if you're a black person and you're on time, or you believe in the merit system,
Yeah.
then you're white. You're not
Right.
black. You're part of the problem. And
This
this is it.
isn't. This is at the end of the. It's at the end of the line for this BS. So the other thing that I think that has been unearthed there is the entire board was behind her. This is how infiltrated our entire educational system is. The entire board needs investigated. Every board. This is at our highest institution. It's Harvard, for God's sakes.
Right.
So what this tells us is the entire educational system needs to be under investigation, because they are hiring from, okay, you call them minorities, and it's always black. Okay, so that's 16% of the population. And you're trying to hire for these very, very important positions from this very minute segment of a population. Are you going to get the best people for the job?
No, No,
No. So I
absolutely not.
mean, this needs to be discussed. It needs to be unearthed, and we just don't say it because we're afraid of being whipped, being called a racist when they're the ones that are being racist.
How do we get over that? How do we get over
They're doing it
our
themselves
fear? You know what I mean? Because it turns out that
because we
just
need
like
the terminology. We need the words to put to it. Being whipped, weaponized identity politics.
I agree.
That is
I
when
agree.
they are calling you a racist while they're being racist. They are calling you sexist when they're being sexist. It's constant.
We had a conversation about this in between shows where I was telling you about Saul Alinsky and his rules for radicals. I think it's like 10 rules for radicals. He wrote a book on this, and he dedicated it to Satan, the biggest radical in all of history. And Hillary Clinton did her master's dissertation on this, and he was actually her mentor, Saul Alinsky. Anyhow, if you ever get a chance, look it up online because the rules are pretty simple. They're not complex. It's an easy read, but when you read it, it's kind of diabolical when you think about how it's been put into use over and over and over. And what you're talking about right now is that if you try to forge justice in any way in a racial situation, then you're immediately mocked as a
Mm-hmm.
bigot, a
Mm-hmm.
racist, a misogynist, or whatever they have these um like you say, weaponized identity politics,
Mm-hmm.
or this is what's happening. And that's one of the rules is mockery.
Mm-hmm.
Mockery actually, there's little defense for mockery, because when you try to defend, oh, I'm not a dummy, you
Well, it's
sound
the
dumb.
same
Yeah,
thing with conspiracy theories. Same exact playbook. Is that
that's right.
yeah, you don't want to get ridiculed for saying something about UFOs or whatever. So you just, so you got to be able to stick your neck out. But it even reminds me of our Peabury Congresswoman AOC when she said on Twitter, like, everybody wants to debate her. She won't debate anybody because it's sexist. You're being whipped right there. You're
Yeah,
being
yeah,
whipped. I mean,
exactly.
she's you. I'm the victim. You're victimizing me, and it's just total BS.
Yeah,
Hey, you
yeah.
ready to move on?
The guy, yeah, sure.
August 19th last year, Russia's Luna 25 lunar landing mission crash landed on the moon. And I don't really remember hearing much about that. It
Oh
was supposed to
yeah.
land on the moon, all that. Well, it went there, it made it, but it crashed on it.
I Now that I'm remembering this, I only
Dude,
heard that it was on its way, but I'd never heard that it
I
crash
know, I kind of
landed.
didn't really either.
Yeah.
4 days later, August 23rd, I remember this. India became the fourth nation to successfully land a spacecraft on the moon. And I was like, as soon as I read that, I was like, good for them. I mean, because they've been trying to come out of this third world country kind of a place, and I think that was really huge. I was excited about that for them. You probably think nobody's been to the moon yet, right?
I think you can fly ships up to the moon. Yep, I believe that happened, but I have a
Okay.
hard time. I do. After I saw that documentary, a funny thing happened on the way to the moon. I got a lot of questions now. I
Why didn't
really
you
want to
Google
believe
it?
that. Yeah, that's funny.
Well, yeah, yeah. Find the rebuttals because
I'm
they're
gonna
being.
I'm gonna go on Chat TTP
There
or
you go.
TPT, and then let's see what they have to say about it.
That's why I never bothered listening to anything like that because because I hadn't heard about it because obviously there's just tons of rebuttals. It'll start with the
Uh,
writer being a complete kook for sure. I don't know. I don't know even know who wrote it.
yeah, the interesting thing was it wasn't like a lot of hearsay and stuff like that. It was actual stuff this guy was showing that we were never shown before, film footage that we were never shown before, that was pretty convincing. And then also this whole thing about the Van Allen radiation belt, that if you start to look at the radiation coming from that and understand that even our people in the space shuttles were affected by that, and to fly through it, they were saying you need to have about a 1 inch layer of lead around you to protect you from that, and there's no way that we have a rocket that that powerful to lift that kind of weight up into space. So these were some of the things at the and here's what I've learned, Barry, and this I've learned the hard way, is that everything somebody says sounds right until you hear the other side of the story. And
That's
so
why I
I've
said you should
come to
look
the
up the other side of the story.
I've I've heard the other side of the story my entire life. This actually is the other side of the story,
Okay.
and now I have questions. I can't say that I believe one way or the other, but knowing that it was a government program and the government has consistently lied to me about everything, I have questions.
Okay. October 8th. We all know what happened then. Israel formally declared war on Hamas following a surprise attack by Hamas operatives on the Israel controlled territory. I don't want to spend much time on that because it's just freaking awful. It's like hell on earth and it's still a mess.
I
And
agree.
everybody just wants to pick a side and divide. And I just don't, I want them to stop murdering each other. Figure it out.
I would like that.
Yeah. Okay. At this point in the declaration, the death toll has already risen to 1,100 from both sides. I had a minor note on that. Okay. November 1st, Collins Dictionary announced AI as the most notable word of 2023. We've already talked about that. I just was like, wow. Yeah, I guess it is.
It's funny that AI is a word.
Yeah. Okay. That's a good point. That's a good point. It's an acronym is now a word.
Is it? But it's not even an acronym because an acronym is like DARPA, but AI isn't. It's not an. It's two
CIA
initials.
is an acronym. It's just the initials of something.
Oh, I thought it was something that. Wait, there's a difference between an acronym and then something that actually becomes a word as an acronym.
I see what you're saying.
I thought that's what I thought.
I'm
that's
not
what an
going to look it
acronym
up.
was. Okay, I'm not either. But anyhow, I don't think AI is a word.
Okay,
but whatever.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
So now
See how dumb AI is making us?
Yeah.
That was my point there.
Okay. I have some positive things from 2023. I specifically sought this out because I just figured everything would be all the negative news. News is only negative. Otherwise, it's not news. That's
right.
Okay.
There should be another word for it.
I know this is a good one here. And I only got like 5. I sifted through about 25 and know that this is from positive.news. And it's a British, I do believe, European. So 20 of the 25 were about climate change, as some kind of achievement in reducing climate emissions somewhere. So I skipped through all that. Okay, so number 1, major cancer breakthroughs. There's some cool stuff here. So notable breakthroughs in the treatment of cancer, a new cervical cancer treatment using cheap existing drugs. See, this couldn't be done in the US, by the way. Okay, a treatment using cheap existing drugs, the FDA or the drug industry,
we're losing money on this.
would
exactly
bury you.
Right.
Okay, using cheap existing drugs was described as the biggest improvement in outcome in this disease, that's cervical cancer, in this disease in over 20 years. Scientists also made a tremendously exciting, in quotes, breakthrough in treating prostate cancer. Glad to hear that. England, meanwhile, approved a drug to prevent, is shown to prevent breast cancer.
Wow.
So we got prostate cancer, women have breast cancer, and those two breakthroughs are tremendous for both.
It's huge. Yeah. Big time.
I'm glad to hear that.
That is good.
Okay. Number 2. The prospect, I like this one. The prospect of near limitless clean energy moved a step closer in 2023 as scientists achieved ignition, in quotes, using nuclear fusion. I'll explain this. This means getting more energy out than you put in. So here's the difference between fusion and fission. Okay, FU versus FI, fusion and fission. Fusion harnesses the heat produced in merging atoms together. Unlike fission, or splitting the atom, which is used in existing nuclear power stations, there's no risk, with fusion, this new thing, there's no risk of a chain reaction meltdown and no dangerous radioactive waste. This is freaking huge right
Mm,
here.
mm.
One or two more
That's
sentences.
very
It
interesting.
was the second time that scientists at a lab in California achieved ignition. Repeating the experiment proved an understanding of its underlying physics. Quote, now we can go on to improve the ultimate goal of one day generating electricity using fusion. Again, this is like having nuclear power plants with no chance of a meltdown and no energy byproduct, radioactive waste.
Wow.
Gigantic.
Huh.
So that was
That's
cool.
good stuff. Yeah.
Okay, number three, a dramatic turnaround in the Amazon. The Amazon breathed a little easier in 2023 following years of rampant deforestation. Analysis by Amazon, this is like a proper organization. Analysis by Amazon Conservation, a nonprofit that monitors the rainforest across 9 countries, said that deforestation rates are down by 55.8% compared to last year. It follows efforts to halt tree loss, notably in Brazil, where President Lula has ramped up environmental enforcement and got tougher on illegal mining. That's a very big positive. I'm very glad
That
to hear
really
that.
is
Mhm.
big time.
Yeah. Did you know that I just heard about Argentina? Argentina got their government got so bad that they actually elected a libertarian, a staunch libertarian for the first time.
Hmm.
And this was on Dave Smith's podcast. And this guy said, he goes, it's going to be a tough 3 years. It's going to take 3 years to turn this around, but we are going to turn it around. And Dave made the point of how things have to get so bad in order to make great change. And he and his partner were talking about how sometimes, like if you're on board the train, that's hard to say, Trump train,
Yeah.
uh,
Trump train.
that you may actually want Biden to win again because you want things to get so bad that even all of those supporters turn on Biden and look for a better solution.
Hmm.
Conversely, if you're just really on board the lefties thing with Biden, you may want Trump to get reelected if
Yeah.
you believe that things are going to get so bad that these people will now, suffer enough and come on board with your cause.
Well,
I
it's
thought that was
true though.
very
It is
interesting.
true that we've seen
I've
where,
never heard that
things
before.
get really bad. Like, okay, I moved from California to Arizona because things got really bad. Had they not gotten
Good
bad,
point.
I wouldn't
Good
have
point.
left. Or if they hadn't gotten real bad, right?
Yeah,
I
but
might
it's
have
a
been like,
shame it's got to get to the point where everybody's dying and everything. Your entire
true. It is a
society
shame.
collapses.
But get this,
Yeah.
Barry. Just on New Year's Eve, we had our house was filled with 10 people, all friends that I didn't know 2 years ago. And I never had a New Year's Eve where I had a whole bunch of people come over before because it just didn't work out that way in California. But boy,
Mm,
did I ever feel the love. And it was in my home, which was just so beautiful.
yeah.
You got to come visit, man, because
Yeah.
I've got the best view in my backyard. It is amazing out there.
I'm
And
not coming in the
the
summer.
winter time, don't come in the summer. You'll hate it here.
I would. I would.
Oh,
I've been there in July before
it's a
for a
terrible
wedding.
time to come.
It happened to be in the high 80s, and everybody's
Whoa.
like, "You got so lucky." Yeah,
That's like 30 degrees cooler than normal.
that's what everyone said. I remember. I think I told the story before. I was at the pool, getting a drink from the cocktail waitress, and we were just talking a little bit. She was from Kansas, and I said, "Yeah, how you like it?" "Oh, it's great." And I said, uh, I said something like, well, she goes, yeah, she goes, oh, so fortunate that you got lucky. It's high 80s. It's normally like 115 degrees right now. And I go, yeah, but it's dry heat. I hear it's not that bad. She leaned into me and she goes, 115 is 115.
That is the truth, Barry. I've
Yeah.
gone outside to my car, and my car is right there. Before I even get to my car, it feels like my skin's on fire. This is like I feel like if I had like some kind of like lotion that had any kind of propellant in it,
Oh,
I would
yeah.
light on fire out there. I would become a roast. I'd be like a roast chicken out there.
Yeah.
I've never felt heat the
Yeah.
way I felt it here. And
Yeah.
when
I
you can
couldn't
get a
take that.
third-degree burn from grabbing the handle of your car door, that's some bad stuff, man.
That is some bad stuff. Okay, letting you know, I am on the last one that I have of this. Then
Okay.
we're going into predictions for
All right.
2024.
Cool.
Okay, this one I find very interesting. 4-day work week trials. The 4-day work week has often been dismissed as utopian thinking, but the results of the world's largest trial, which took place in the UK, suggested it was a win-win for employees and bosses. Similar trials in the US and in South Africa, where participants worked fewer hours for the same pay, suggested a shorter work week brought, in quotes, huge benefits. Critics question whether those benefits can be sustained long term.
Mm,
I think this is extremely interesting.
I
And
think it's interesting too. Go ahead.
the reason I do is because we have been on this 5-day work week forever now. And while I think it at least was really good to keep people busy and with something productive to do, I think in this day and age with more and more automation, I think we should be segueing into having more free time, but to find something meaningful to do at that time, something productive. And instead of, okay, I have an extra day to go to the bar all day, and that could happen to a lot of people. That is the biggest what criticism against giving people a baseline stipend is because most of the poor people will just when they right now they get a welfare check or whatever will go on a 4-day bender until they blow it and they're broke. So give them more money and you're going to find more deaths on your hands from overdosing and bad health habits and stuff. So I think if we could ease into this as we necessarily will have more time via automation, that
You,
go ahead, you go ahead.
you know what I would like to see
Mm.
is because the whole thing, the what was it? Was it Ford that or that it was the workers, auto workers union that went on strike recently over the
Yeah.
last few months, and they were looking for more pay and less hours,
Hmm.
and it's like, huh, more pay and less hours. That
Yeah.
those two normally don't go together. Because of course of the fear of the loss of revenues by doing
Hmm.
something like that. So maybe, I mean, I personally love the idea of a 4-day week, and I would be willing to put 2 hours extra in for 4 days in a row in order to get the
Agreed. That's
three
not,
days off.
this
That's
is
not what they're
about
saying.
less
No,
hours, less
right.
hours.
But maybe that's where you start. Like, ask for volunteers. That maybe a company, hey, who wants to try this new program out and see if it's productive, like right there, and then
Mhm.
see if you can scale hours back. Because I agree with your premise here that with automation,
Mhm.
we should be able to do that. And
Uh-huh.
the fact of the matter is, we see, unlike, I'm just gonna display the flip side of the coin on what you were talking about. Yep, more free time could mean more idle time, more time for destructive
Yeah.
behavior.
Hmm. Hmm.
But the fact is that we know that we go to work to provide for our families. And like, for instance, my dad, I hardly ever saw him because he was always at work and he died when he was 55. And
Yeah.
so there's a problem there too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe there's a way to somehow mediate this whole thing,
Hmm.
because I don't think it's profitable for companies. My dad worked for the phone company for 30 years, and dying at 55, all of that tribal knowledge goes away. All
Yeah.
of that mentor ability goes away. And I think the company really loses when stuff like that happens. So I like that they're thinking outside the box on this. And I always said if I were going to run for president, my number one thing would be the 4-day work week.
Well, I think it is a good thing too. And when it all comes to back to balance. And I think that you're touching on that because, you know, most people will think, I'm sure most people will be like, I never want to work. If I didn't have to work, I wouldn't work.
Huh.
Yeah, until you do. And
Yeah,
because
yeah.
there's a whole lot of people in this country that try to find every other means to get around not working, and it's not good for them. It
Well,
is not good for them.
it's interesting you're saying that, because I had an experience where I took a severance and it was basically a year's pay.
Hmm.
And I what a great thing. Who gets this?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I took the time, and this is when we started the show, by the way.
Hmm.
Um, but but I found it really hard to relax during those
Yeah.
those first several months. It was just like I should be doing something. I feel guilty because I'm not doing something, and maybe it's because of my programming over a lifetime of socialization here. But
Hmm.
but
That's
it
true.
wasn't fulfilling to not do anything, and I
Right.
found myself doing a lot. Like
Mm.
I was working. I actually started working really early with Black Ops Partners. We were doing our
Mm.
show. I was looking at other things that I was doing, and I found that gave me fulfillment. And I
Yeah,
think
dude.
that's what we're
Al-
looking for here.
Along those lines, I would like to see this is back to a concept we talked about over the years since the very beginning. Lisa and I still talk about all the time about, in our instance, about building a retirement community. You and Anne Marie and Scott and Karen and all of our dear friends and family all invited to participate in this community, and I could also see it going into with younger people who have a 4-day work week. Here's my point, because this is where we can have a very luxurious kind of lifestyle and surroundings, but it is all about being as self-sustaining as possible, having beautiful pieces of gardens in all these different places that we tend to. And when you see these retirement communities today, look at, and I've looked them up, they're all about these boomers going on golf courses. And, it looks like they're going to a vacation lodge for the rest of their lives. That sounds like hell to me. I would hate, no, I'm talking about, oh, so then they go to their big box store to have their steak at, Longo's or whatever. And it's all about feeding these big giant corporations and stuff, to be quite honest. And I would like it to be like a community where we tend to these gardens ourselves because we actually use these fruits and vegetables and stuff in our restaurant that we run ourselves because we're all working about 3 hours a day or whatever in this
Yeah,
retirement
yeah.
community.
I
I
could
think
see something like that working
as
very well.
sustainable,
Yeah.
self-sustainable as possible. I would like to see our own healthcare on premises. General practitioner, get
Wouldn't that
off
be
the
great?
grid with
Yep,
that
yep.
and start solving these problems of all of the big businesses by taking it away from them, taking it
Yeah,
back.
yeah.
And
I
so
like what
for
you're saying.
younger people that have a 4-day work week, do a form of the same, where you have that extra time and you can build a more self-sustaining community. I just those kinds of things we need to talk more about. We need to take this country back.
Without a doubt. Without a doubt.
With that, we are at predictions for 2024.
All
And
right.
so I don't have a lot left. These are things that as I was preparing my notes and then going down and making coffee and something to eat and all that, my mind just started going. And so my first one, I have said it before, I've said it several times. My biggest prediction of 2024, somehow Biden will be replaced, probably by Gavin Newsom.
Yeah.
And I don't know how this is going to happen, but there's no way they're running out that Manchurian candidate again. No way.
Well, I think that that's interesting. I don't understand how Biden could possibly be the favorite for the Democrat Party, and it's seeming like that's just not the case anyhow.
Yeah.
So I agree that it's I don't know how it's going to happen either. That it's not going to be Biden. It's going to be somebody else. I don't know if it's going to be Newsom now. I thought for sure it was going to be, but now he kind of I don't see him on the I don't see him out there like he was before. And I'm also hearing that the so-called powers that be are backing Nikki Haley now. And I'm talking about the establishment people,
Yeah. Oh yeah, deep
the
state, man.
well, and also the military industrial
That's what I'm talking about.
complex.
That's
Yeah,
what I'm talking about. She is on the board of Lockheed Martin, I'm pretty
it's I
sure.
thought it was Boeing.
It could be. It could
But
be.
it's either one. I mean, they're
Yeah.
both part of the military industrial
She was
complex,
broke until
and
she got on that board. Now she's a millionaire.
that's exactly right. And when you
She'll
hear
get us
her
in all
speak,
kinds of Wars. Yeah.
she's a war hawk, is
Yep.
what she
Yep.
is. And
Yep.
so it seems like all bets are off now when it comes to Republican versus Democrat. To
Mm.
me, they're the same. They're just singing a different song.
Yeah,
Because
interesting.
like the Democrats are doing this and they're doing that, and the Republicans are doing nothing and letting the Democrats do whatever they say.
Yeah,
So they're in on it too.
yeah,
And I think it has everything to do with this military industrial complex. They're all getting paid, right?
yeah.
They're
Oh,
getting
yeah,
paid
they
by
are.
the Googles and the Microsofts and the Facebooks out there as well. So
Mm.
those are the people that are really running the government, and these people are just puppets here. But Nikki Haley, I think, is interesting, and I think the real fight now, and even with Trump, I okay, I like Trump, but I also realize that there's a big liability with somebody like Trump coming into the office. And the
Mhm.
more I hear Vivek
Vivek,
Ramaswamy,
Vivek.
Vivek, is that
Yeah,
how you
like
say it?
it rhymes with cake. You did a rap like that.
Vivek rhymes with cake. That's funny. The more I hear that guy talk, the more I
I
think
like him.
that he is the future of the conservatives, whatever party that is, because I feel like that
Mm,
could change very
mm.
rapidly.
Interesting.
But I'd say keep an eye on that guy, whether he wins or not this year. Keep an eye on what's happening between him and Nikki Haley. And apparently in the debates, it's super ugly between those two.
Yes, yes, it is. It has been for quite some time. Yeah, she doesn't have much to say outside of claiming victimhood. He doesn't like women, and he's a sexist.
Yeah,
She's dumb as a
she
rock.
doesn't. Well, here's the thing: is that I did like her when she was a part of the UN,
Mm,
because she definitely was. I mean, when I would see her speak, it seemed like she was just unadulterated truth that she would
mm,
tell, and
mm,
something's happened in between those two times.
mm.
Going back to Newsom, I get the feeling that people just don't like him.
You know
That
what I
could just
think?
be
As you were saying that a minute ago, I was thinking the government's good for this. Trotting something out there, like the latest disease, the new COVID. They'll trot it out there, and then it's like, oh, they're not biting. Ah, we'll pull it back.
right, right. They're going fishing.
Yeah,
Oh, the
yeah,
fish aren't
they
biting
do it
this
all the
morning.
time.
Yeah,
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 yeah.
they
So
do.
they
You're right.
may have done that with it. They're like, oh, nobody likes this guy. You
Yeah,
know, we know Kamala was a mistake. Oops, that's the
yeah.
DEI get you. Oh, okay. So I got a big one for you. This is a
Okay.
prediction. Obama's 2011 executive order to promote DEI is reversed. It is found to, because it'll be a new president. It is, and it's probably going to be a Republican. It's found to be racist, sexist, and unconstitutional. That's my
Uh,
big prediction.
I love that prediction. And it does seem to me that, first off, what we're seeing here is discrimination in the highest order.
Yeah,
This is exactly what the civil rights movement was supposed to be about.
right,
And it was supposed to be about not judging people by by the color of their skin, but of the content of their character.
right.
And we've gone right to the judging people by the color of their
Pendulum
skin.
swung.
Yeah,
Let me ask you something.
yeah.
This I would suggest that this started with affirmative action. And when did that start? In the
With the
70s?
civil rights movement. So the Civil Rights Act of 1964
Okay.
started all of that.
Okay. And that
And
makes
by the
perfect
way,
sense.
yes, it does, because when you take a look at what's happened to the Black community as a
Mhm.
result of the policies of the civil rights movement, the government replaced the fathers in the Black household.
Yes.
And
Yes.
as a result, what you have is you've got a maternalistic society in Black neighborhoods. And at the same time, you've seen the existence of violent crimes go up exponentially in those areas. But when we look at the statistics from before the civil rights movement, the 50s, for example, Black families, it was 80% of them had both mother and father in the house. Violent crime in their neighborhoods was very, very low.
Mm.
The
Hmm.
actual income had been rising for decades in the Black community. And when the Civil Rights Act passed, that plateaued immediately. And you now, as we look back, that the exact reversal of those statistics, where upwards of 80% of Black children are growing up in a single parent household with the mother as the head of the household.
Hmm.
It makes sense when you take a look at what's happened. And I got to tell you, growing up with a dad in my household, some of the things these guys are getting away with. I don't know if you saw recently where there was some kind of trial that happened with a black guy that was being the judge was reading the sentence and the guy dove over and
Oh,
tackled her onto
yeah.
the ground.
Oh, my
Well,
God.
I'm going to tell you this, that if that guy, I would bet money that that guy did not grow up with a father in his house,
Sure.
and that had he been acting like that around the house, the father would have
For
corrected
sure.
that.
For
Just like
sure.
they say on The Shining, you should correct that. My dad was real good at correcting things.
All right.
And that's
So,
what's needed.
no, for sure. So, with the advent of affirmative action, and it's arguable whether that was a good thing or not. I tend to think it was a good thing to give the Black community a kickstart and hope to get into the workforce. But I think it should have been like a 10-year plan, and that's it.
Well,
But
I
the
think that
fact is, it was used to kickstart something like all the way in 2011, Obama, the deity for so many people, gives an executive order to promote DEI, which they just loved. And we talked about throughout this show, the disaster that DEI is and has been found to be all along the way.
no, I think it's really very, you articulated that well, that it is connected to affirmative action and also the civil rights movement. But this, to me, affirmative action, of course, we couldn't see what was going to happen in the future back then, but the fact is that affirmative action is a slippery slope, and
Mm,
once that floodgate opened up,
yeah,
just like you said about the about something else earlier, you can't put that toothpaste back in the tube.
right,
It's out there, and now it's being used in such a heinous way. It's just
right.
we brought it up earlier, just it and I think it really works against the Black community more than anything
Well,
else now.
for sure. It's because, as always in the United States, when you start with something good, you got to take it all the way so far until it just implodes on itself. So, no, it's race. It's become the biggest promotion of racism and sexism that we've ever seen since
Well,
slavery.
you look at, I just saw a political cartoon the other day, and it was two slides, and it was the president of a college standing at the podium saying, we're not going to let we're going to make it easier for people of color to come in, and we're going to make it harder for white people to get in. And then there was a whole bunch of people back there like, yay, like, okay. But then it was like 10 years later, and the president had this real evil look on their face, and it was just like, oh geez, I'm starting to forget what
Oh,
the
that's
next
right.
slide was, but it's just this whole thing where it's just acceptable now to
Mhm.
discriminate against people, and what we've done on these college campuses to these kids.
Yeah,
uh,
and we've only just started to become aware of this. And you and I talked about it before. Loudonville, just about 2 years ago, was the epicenter of this awakening to what do you call it? What do you call it? Critical race theory.
yes,
And
right.
people didn't know what critical race theory was until this girl gets raped by a boy in a dress in the restroom, and then you mentioned that they shipped him off somewhere else, and he did it to somebody else,
Yeah.
and it's heinous. Now you see what's going on at Harvard, and the whole board is infiltrated with all these people. So we have seen this a generation too late, but now, and this is another one of my predictions for 2024. 2024 will mark the beginning of the awakening from the woke age. And we need to
Yeah,
use that term. Why don't we start using some correct terminology and some correct meaning? Let's call it an awakening from
it
woke.
is an awakening from wokeness, and I have that as my prediction as well. I see the wokeness as a part of the one world government that is
No,
being
yeah, sure,
implemented as well.
sure.
It is their weapon against us, and I see people becoming awakened to the fact that they're being controlled and manipulated by this
Mhm.
entity. And I actually believe that this is the year that people will be very they're going to be violently shaken awake by this.
I like that. It's a good way to put it. And I think being the election year and the disaster that has been Joe Biden, his controllers, his handlers, I should be more accurate and say that. People and our pocketbooks, our groceries, our pensions, our retirements, just being robbed from us. Oh, we are just going to be. I mean, this is a steamroll, a runaway train away from all of that that's been done to us these last few years. So that, yeah, I agree with that. I have one last prediction. We could take this wherever you want. I predict that out of just a need for attention, the thirst for the lost attention, that Dylan Mulvaney will now identify as an alien in 2024.
That's a good one,
Or
man.
maybe he'll just untuck and become a linebacker or
That's
something.
a linebacker. That's hilarious, man. I think that now that, and I don't know if that's going to happen or not, but that'd be really funny if that happens. But
Yeah.
my thing is this: is that we are in an election year this year, and we saw what a presidential election year, and we saw what happened during the last presidential election year, and a lot of things became unglued right about this time of that election year. COVID,
Oh, right.
we had the few months after that, the whole George Floyd thing, and then the summer of love with all of our cities
Oh,
catching on fire.
yeah.
We had the impeachment of President Trump over his words to President Zelensky. We had the Hunter Biden New York Post story that was
Mm,
called Russian disinformation by
mm.
52 former intelligence agents, 5 of which were former heads of the CIA, which turned out to be a lie. So that you start to piece these things together, and these people are all in cahoots. And then you look at Joe Biden's performance over the last 4 years, and I don't think that Democrats really, in their heart of hearts, could be happy with how things are going. And
No
so it
way.
seems to me that the only way that they can win anything is by doing exactly what the game plan has always been, which is to incent this disunity, incent chaos, violence, and this sense of anarchy, which is what they did right before the election. And it could be that because of that, that they postpone the election. And so
Wow. Yeah.
we could see a very strong use of executive order in order to make things like this happen. And we are
Wow.
already seeing that the administration in charge right now is not afraid to be unconstitutional in any
Right.
way.
Right.
So the all bets are off. They've already made it clear that their number one goal is to not let former President Trump be the president again. And we've seen
Yeah.
states already taking him off the ballot. That's very unconstitutional.
Yes. Yes.
What's
Yes.
happening right now. So it seems to me that all bets are off for these people, and that
Hmm.
they're going to do whatever they have to do in order to maintain power. And I think we're gonna see a big taste of that this year, and I think it's going to be unprecedented. I think what we
I
saw in
agree.
2020, it'll be different this year, and I think there's going to be some surprises around that.
I am quite sure, and I don't know what they're going to be, but I think this whole anti-democratic process cuts both ways too. I think just the weirdness surrounding Trump from his supporters, and he's not debating along with the other people because hey, he doesn't have to. But this is unprecedented. It's the same with Biden. It's a coronation for Biden. They know that he can't speak a full sentence, and so they're just holding him out. So the lack of a democratic process going on in this election is terrifying, and it's unprecedented. And to your point, I agree with you coming right there. I don't know how this is going to culminate, but I really don't. But it's going to be historic in
Well,
a bad way. In a
yeah,
bad way.
and I think that the border crisis is going to play into this big time,
Oh
because
yeah.
as we take a look at the border crisis, as I mentioned earlier, that it's unsustainable. The Democrats all know that.
Mhm.
However, they're not going to stop doing it because they have a goal. We already saw what they were doing with the DACA people, the so-called dreamers, and wanting to make
Mhm.
them citizens. We already
Mhm.
know that Blinken and Mayorkas were down there talking to the Mexican president a couple of weeks ago, and they were talking about amnesty for the illegals that have come across already, which
Mhm.
is in the millions now over the past 3 years.
Mhm.
We know that they want them to be the voters.
Mhm.
And we
Right.
know that any of those people that came across illegally and have children will be American citizens and they will be voters. And
Mhm.
so this is all about maintaining power. Now,
Sure it is.
I just also believe that as we've seen people from the ages, men from the ages of 18 to 35 coming across in droves, especially from China, we've seen lots of people, men from China coming over, that we could see something like terror cells. We could see organized militias. I hope that's not the case, but it seems like our enemies would find it very easy to make something like that happen, and especially in an
Uh,
election year like this.
That's interesting, but what I think is more likely, and that could happen along with what I'm about to say. I'm taking this from what you said earlier about I didn't know this, that Biden all of a sudden out of nowhere says, "Oh, we need to do something about the border. I need some more money." Like, really?
Yeah,
Okay, so this is where this is going, Merle. From now until November, there's going to be an orchestrated shift in the news media, the propaganda that's coming out about how Joe Biden is really fed up with this border crisis problem and is taking things in control, but he's also so empathetic with the people that are over here. They're true Americans that want to be true Americans. And so we're going to grant them, going to grease the wheels to their citizenship and give them all kinds of free stuff. And and try to look like a hero running into November. And he's going to run on that.
that seems extremely logical. I mean,
Yes, for
if your
sure.
back is against the wall the way his is, you don't. Of course, that's a great
And
strategy.
and I'm going to tell you right now, there's going to in the coming months, they're going to be closing that border in one way or another, and because they got their millions, they got their millions of people. That was the plan all along. And
Wow, I hadn't thought of that, but yeah, that sounds logical too.
and by the time summer comes around, the all the media is going to be brainwashing us so much. You're going to actually think that Biden was fine on the border. What are you talking about? Yeah.
Wow, that's good stuff, Barry. I mean, God,
You led me down that path.
I hope none of this happens, but I mean, I think it seems so logical that it would
Yeah.
happen.
Yeah, it
All
does.
right, well, that was really. Let's see if I have anything else. I don't know. Oh, no, no, that was I couldn't even read my own notes right there. Oh, I do believe that some of the other stuff that's going to happen. I think that this child abduction and
Mm,
this human slave trade thing
mm.
is going to become more and more exposed this year.
God, I
Uh,
hope so.
and I think what we're going to find is that there are some organizations that are deeply invested in this that we know and many people trust. I personally believe that the UN is heavily involved in this. And I think it'll be something that's going to be exposed here. As you take a look, if you start looking up the UN and rape, and just put that into your search engine, the most heinous things will come up
I'm
of what
not
they've
putting that in
done.
my algorithm.
Yeah. Well, this is the thing is that I really believe we know that the drug cartels are behind the sex trade that's happening at the border. We know that those people are in cahoots with the one world government organization. And so they're making billions of dollars off of this. And those are the kind of people that are attracted to the billions. And those are the people that really fall victim to this. So I think we're going to learn more. That's going to be probably very uncomfortable to learn, especially as we see this Jeffrey Epstein thing coming more and more to
Yeah, I
light.
still think that that's going to be wah, 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 as
I,
they
I hope. I hope.
As
that you're
they
not right about
massage
that?
it the way they massage it.
They're going to, and we
Yeah.
know they're going to, and I think
Mhm.
that's where people are going to start really waking up, because
Yeah,
I
I
think that
hope.
most people believe when it comes to Epstein that he didn't commit suicide, and that the powers that be killed him so that they wouldn't be exposed. And I think that the whole thing where they came, oh, he was just friends, Clinton was just friends with Epstein. I don't think the majority of people can swallow that, but I could be wrong.
Yeah. Well, I want to say that the movie The Sound of Freedom is now on Amazon Prime. You could watch it for free there. Most of us have Amazon Prime. And it's based on a true story. We covered it here a few months ago. And it's a true story about the sex trafficking from a particular point of view. And it's a great movie. It's not a documentary. It's like Hollywood action movie, and but based on the truth. And I want to say it goes way beyond the border. It is a worldwide problem. Ohio is a big source of sex trafficking. I didn't know it, but Toledo is our capital of the sex trafficking.
Really? Wow.
It's, I guess it's transient. It's a good
A lot of trucks going through
yeah.
there and stuff. And
Route 90
that's
is a
it.
big
Yeah.
source of
Big artery.
It's a big artery. That's a good way to put it. And I believe they give a lot of statistics
Barry,
at the end of the movie. 2 million people each year are abducted into the sex slavery industry.
so when Anne Marie and I travel back and forth from Los Angeles to visit the kids or whatever, we drive. It's about a 6.5 hour drive. And a lot of times we'll just find like an exit to stop and have lunch. And in between those two areas, it's desolate. I mean, it's all desert and everything. So you just pull off an exit, and the exits are basically, a dirt road, and you just pull off and just have your lunch. It's actually beautiful back there. But what we found is that at each of these places, there's a whole bunch of trash that other people have gone and done that as well, I guess. But what we're seeing also, which is disturbing, is I'll see children's clothing. I will see children's toys there.
Oh,
And it's like, was this a rendezvous point for
that
some
could
kind of
easily be.
I
Yeah.
mean, seriously. And then also we've seen furniture there too, as well, like a couch or something. So, in other words, maybe somebody's there doing business and they put some couches there, and after they were done, they just left it all there.
Yeah.
But it does look extremely suspicious. And then you go to these rest areas and you see the various places in the rest area where there's just a big line of pictures of kids that are people are looking for. They're missing. This is a big deal. This
It's
is
a
a big
huge deal. I hope you're right with your prediction that this kind of there's an enlightenment that goes on. It's because it's such a worldwide phenomenon. And boy, for a minute, I want to say one of the stats in there is that the slave industry that's going on today eclipses anything that's ever happened before. So everybody that wants to claim the reparations from something that happened to your great 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 grandparents, I mean, how about let's do something about what we can do, what's going on today, because we can really do something if people open their eyes to it and stop with the distractions. And yeah, that's all I'm going to say. And no, I'm going to back it up with watch Sound of Freedom on
Yeah.
Prime. It is a good movie.
It's very educational, and I think they're only displaying the very tip of the iceberg here. I think it's a whole lot worse.
Yeah, it is.
But that's it
with
for
that.
me.
Okay, with that, let's wrap. Yeah, it's Friday night here. I have to go out and get something to eat. I'm starving.
Yeah, me too, as a matter of fact. And we were supposed to meet some friends at a restaurant tonight. It's called Santan's Village. No, Santan something or other. Santan's the mountain that's behind me, and it's a barbecue place, and they have live music there and everything.
Sounds great.
Pretty cool place. Very American kind of atmosphere. They've got all these quotes on the wall from founding fathers and famous Americans that are really awesome, and it makes it feel real good.
It occurred to me that sounds almost like an oxymoron when you have so many illegal immigrants in that area that you say that I would think there'd be Mexican restaurants on every freaking corner.
It's interesting. I live in a very
which I love.
rural
It's my
area.
favorite, by the way. my
I
favorite.
love it too. And there are Mexican restaurants over here, but this is where I live is a very rural, farmers and it's a very country over here, and it's like being in the Midwest, really,
Oh,
very much like that here.
nice, nice. With that, let's wrap up, and let's do it again soon. We'll figure it out.
Sounds good, Barry.
All right.
Tell and do
Oh,
you want to say where we could be found?
yeah. We're at over50startingover.com. You can sign up to the email list there, get this dropped in your email box. As it happens, we're also at YouTube, over 50 starting over, and get us on Apple Podcasts at over 50 starting over. Please leave us a 5-star review so we can reach more people. Really appreciate that.
And leave comments. We love your comments. Please comment. We want to hear from you.
Share.
All right. Do it right now. All right.
All right. We'll see you later. Have a good weekend, Merle.
You too, Barry.
All right.